Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, November 22nd. There's a lot happening on the access and privacy front across Canada this week, especially at the local level. We begin with two important reports about artificial intelligence, one municipal government adopting a responsible use policy, and another analysis warning that shadow AI is already posing silent risks inside Canada's healthcare system. We then turn to a major set of findings from provincial privacy watchdogs on the PowerSchool data breach and a series of access and information governance stories from across the country, including everything from flood-related FOI threats in Ontario to Manitoba's struggling home care system and a new privacy coordinator in Three Rivers. From there, we shift to the US, where three Associated Press investigations outline the escalating impacts of President Trump's immigration and enforcement policies. And finally, we take a closer look at new AP reporting, supported by access requests, documenting a surge in Palestinian deaths inside Israeli custody. Now, one more important note before we dive in. Bill C-4 is now moving toward the Senate, and as politicians look to exempt themselves from Canada's privacy laws, the personal information of Canadians is increasingly at risk. You'll find links in the show notes to learn more and to make your voice heard. All right, let's dive in. We begin in Adelaide, Metcalfe, Ontario, where LGI reporter David Gomez at the Middlesex Banner reports that Council has approved a new responsible use of artificial intelligence policy, positioning the township ahead of expected provincial regulations. The province introduced Bill 194 in 2024, which aims to enhance digital security and public trust in the use of artificial intelligence. Despite this, there are no regulations in place to guide the policy development. CAO Morgan Calvert says the policy draws from Canada's voluntary AI Code of Conduct and aims to improve efficiency in everything from customer service to freedom of information requests. Human oversight remains a requirement, with a trust but verify model, ensuring any AI-generated answers are fully sourced. The township has also applied for a $95,000 Ontario Trillium Foundation grant to support an AI-based system. In the same meeting, Council was told its School Road landfill has reached capacity for non-hazardous waste, prompting immediate service changes and further reviews. Council voted unanimously to receive the landfill capacity report for information and directed staff to consult with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks and GHD Engineering Services. Meanwhile, a new analysis warns that shadow AI, the informal use of tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, or Gemini by clinicians, is quietly becoming one of the most overlooked cybersecurity threats in Canadian healthcare. Doctors and nurses across the country are increasingly pasting patient details into public AI systems that operate on foreign servers. Once that data leaves a controlled network, there are no guarantees about retention, storage, or reuse. Claims of anonymization are not enough. Increasingly, anonymized data can be re-identified by cross-referencing other personal information, clinical data, timestamps, and geographic clues. The dangers of shadow AI are that it doesn't set off any alarms like a malicious attack, and no one realizes sensitive data has crossed borders. Experts point out that accidental internal leaks now account for a growing share of global data breaches, with the average breach costing $4.9 million. The report calls on health institutions to 1. Audit AI use in cybersecurity reviews, 2. Create certified AI-safe gateways hosted in Canada, and 3. Strengthen staff training on data handling risks. Shadow AI, the authors warn, is already embedded in clinical routines and may bypass every safeguard a hospital believes it has in place. Shifting to other Canadian privacy stories. Provincial privacy watchdogs say school boards were unprepared for the massive 2024 PowerSchool data breach, which compromised information on 5.2 million students, parents, and staff across Canada. Investigators found that boards lacked proper breach response plans, did not include required privacy and security clauses in their contracts, and failed to adequately oversee the company's safeguards. The provincial privacy commissioners made recommendations in their reports, including that school districts and their boards review their agreements with PowerSchool, implement monitoring systems, and ensure adequate breach policies are in place. A U.S. man convicted of cyber extortion received 4 years in prison for his role in the attack. PowerSchool is committed to improved monitoring and will provide an independent security assessment to Canada's Federal Privacy Commissioner by 2026. Next in Ramara, Ontario, LGI reporter Danielle Pittman reports on an escalating dispute between the township and the local Chamber of Commerce. The chamber says it was blindsided by a sudden eviction notice after 14 years in the municipal building. But Mayor Basil Clark disputes that, saying the organization has had written notice for nearly 2 years, and that the issue simply comes down to space and privacy requirements for township staff. Clark noted the Protection Act requires certain staff to have office space in order to conduct confidential calls. Staff such as bylaw officers, treasury, and building department members all require privacy to answer some of these calls. The chamber has now vacated and is working remotely while searching for a new home, and both sides say they remain committed to supporting local business despite the tensions. The RCMP says Canadian and international police forces have dismantled a global cybercrime infrastructure responsible for large-scale data theft and ransomware attacks. The main suspect was arrested in Greece, and more than 1,000 servers were taken down worldwide in what police describe as the largest operation of its kind. The man was accused of operating software that allowed criminals to remotely control victims' computers, while other aspects of the enterprise saw criminals steal sensitive personal data such as passwords and banking details. In Manitoba, LGI reporter Stephen Sukow reports that Manitoba Public Insurance has launched a new license lookup tool that allows employers and organizations to verify whether a driver's license is valid without visiting a service center. To safeguard privacy, searches can only be performed with a known license number, and no personal details are displayed. MPI argues the tool improves safety by helping keep suspended or restricted drivers off the road. The online service is targeted toward employers, volunteer organizations, vehicle owners, nonprofit agencies, and external licensing jurisdictions that need to ensure drivers meet legal requirements before getting behind the wheel. Now to stories informed by access requests in Canada. In British Columbia, Attorney General Nikki Sharma says she is deeply disturbed that X Corp is challenging an order to globally remove a non-consensual intimate image under the province's Intimate Images Protection Act. The tribunal ordered X to remove the image after a transgender complainant from BC, whose name is anonymized in court documents, applied for a protection order under the law earlier this year. X argues that global blocking would undermine national sovereignty and free speech abroad, and would hypothetically allow hostile foreign nations to demand removal of statements made by a Canadian Prime Minister or Premier. The petition claimed that global blocking orders would result in a situation where the country with the most restrictive laws would dictate what content is available on the internet. The tribunal fined the company $100,000 for only geo-blocking the image in Canada. The province will intervene in court to defend the law, saying survivors deserve real protection. Next is an interesting dynamic where impacted citizens are making informal requests for information prior to formal FOI requests. Niagara-on-the-Lake farmer Michael Watson has issued a deadline to the town to detail its plan to address repeated flooding tied to the Shotsky Drain. If the town doesn't provide a full report by November 30th, Watson says he'll file a Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act request for all related records and potentially pursue legal action. Watson wants a full detailed report from the municipality covering all correspondence, meetings, inspections, surveys, and maintenance related to the Shotsky Drain since January 2024. The town says several engineered solutions are under review, but Watson warns the damage to crops and infrastructure has already been significant. Watson said he's still figuring out how much damage the flooding did in financial terms. A new report from the Manitoba Nurses Union, informed by FOI data and frontline interviews, says the province's home care system has been dismantled by years of under-resourcing and failed reforms. Nursing hours have risen just 2%, despite a 41% increase in clients. Some weekends this summer saw more than 4,200 unassigned visits. The province acknowledges challenges but says cancellations have since dropped 43% and rebuilding efforts are underway. The report cites a few policy changes for weakening home care, including the dissolution of specialized nursing teams beginning in 2014, the termination of the innovative hospital home team in 2017, and the erosion of rapid response teams during the pandemic. The paper outlines 6 recommendations, including rebuilding rapid response teams, expanding caregiver supports, implementing standardized reporting, investing in reliable scheduling technology, and restoring boundaries around regulated scopes of practice. Out on the East Coast, we have another story providing a great example of the dual role many access and privacy professionals face. Three Rivers PEI has appointed Andrea McDonald as its new Protection of Privacy Coordinator. The role oversees all access to information requests, privacy training for staff, and annual reporting to council, with no added cost to the town. They are also required to determine the estimated fees for the applications and write an annual report to the council with information on the number of applications received by the town, including the number of applications that were denied and accepted. There had been a vacancy for the job since the previous clerk retired in May after 5 years. And now here's our look further south. 3 AP investigations this week outline how President Trump's immigration and enforcement agenda is reshaping U.S. institutions and affecting American citizens. First, naturalized citizens from countries like Sierra Leone say the push to dramatically expand deportations and even reconsider birthright citizenship is eroding their sense of safety. Some now travel domestically only with passports, fearing mistaken detention. Those fears of traveling within the borders are on the rise after stories began circulating of a U.S. citizen accused of being there illegally and detained, even after his mother produced his birth certificate. Second, the administration is seeking to transfer imprisoned Colorado elections clerk Tina Peters, a key figure in 2020 election conspiracy theories, from state to federal custody. Colorado officials call the move outrageous and say they'll fight it. A member of Peters' legal team said a letter received from the Trump administration didn't state a purpose for the move, but believes it is so she could be more easily involved in investigations into voting machines in the 2020 presidential election, and because of health problems she has been having in state prison. And third, a federal judge has revived a criminal contempt probe into the administration after U.S. officials failed to return planes carrying Venezuelan migrants in March, despite an explicit court order. Those migrants were instead flown to a prison in El Salvador, prompting warnings about executive defiance of judicial authority. The U.S. District Court says the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit gave him the authority to proceed with the inquiry, which will determine whether there is sufficient evidence to refer the matter for prosecution. The judge has previously warned he could seek to have officials in the administration prosecuted. Staying in the United States, the Associated Press reports Cash App is rolling out a new agentic AI chatbot called MoneyBot, designed to take actions, not just answer questions. Unlike traditional banking chatbots, MoneyBot can propose saving plans, analyze spending in real time, buy or sell stock, and set up automated transfers with just a quick confirmation. It runs 3 different AI models behind the scenes and, in some cases, predicts why a customer opened the app before they type anything. But the power of agentic AI brings serious privacy and consumer protection questions. Regulators worry that chatbots could steer users toward products owned by a platform's parent company, in this case, Cash App's Afterpay services, or move money based on unclear or poorly monitored prompts. Cash App says guardrails are in place that users must always confirm transactions. Even so, the company cautions that AI can make mistakes, a warning that carries much more weight when a chatbot has the power to move your money. Closing out our U.S. segment, AT&T has agreed to a $177 million settlement after 2 major data breaches exposed years' worth of customer information, from Social Security numbers to call record metadata, covering nearly every subscriber between 2022 and early 2023. The first breach affected numerous current and former customers. The second involved massive downloads from a third-party cloud workspace. AT&T denies wrongdoing but says the settlement avoids protracted litigation. Affected consumers have until December 18th to file a claim, with possible payments up to $5,000 for the first breach and $2,500 for the second, depending on documented losses and the number of successful claims. A final approval hearing is scheduled for January 2026. New reporting from the Associated Press, supported by access requests and a detailed review by Physicians for Human Rights Israel, reveals a surge in Palestinian deaths inside Israeli prisons and detention centers since the start of the Gaza war. The report says systemic violence and denial of medical care at prisons and detention centers contributed to many of the deaths it examined. Nearly 100 detainees have died, far more than the previous decade, amid widespread allegations of physical abuse, prolonged shackling, medical neglect, and extreme overcrowding. Former guards, nurses, detainees, and family members describe detainees being beaten for moving or speaking, suffering untreated injuries, and in some cases dying within days of being taken into custody. PHRI and AP both confirmed that at least 29 prisoners have died at the Sidi Taiman military prison alone, with the facility being dubbed a graveyard because so many prisoners were dying there. Israel's prison service disputes the reported death count but acknowledges some deaths and says wrongdoing is investigated. Rights groups argue oversight remains inadequate. An Army spokesperson said the death count in the PHRI report is inflated, while declining to say what the Army believes the real number to be. PHRI documented deaths by interviewing former detainees and prison medical staff, examining reports prepared by doctors who observed autopsies at the behest of dead prisoners' families, and confirming dozens of fatalities through Freedom of Information requests. As always, we hope today's stories help you stay informed about the latest issues in privacy, information management, and public transparency. A quick reminder that next week we'll be sharing our sit-down interview with BC Information and Privacy Commissioner Michael Harvey, so be sure to tune in for that commentary. You'll find links in the show notes and at fipa.bc.ca, that's fipa.bc.ca, to learn more about Bill C-4 and how to make your voice heard. To help us keep the mics on, consider subscribing through FIPA News Monitoring or making a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music in today's show is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for joining. A big FIPA thank you to all the contributors, reporters, and outlets that make this podcast possible, and to you, our listeners. Stay safe and stay informed.